Right, a warm welcome to a Podful of Saints on a Tuesday evening. It looks like the 3rd of May 2022. This is number 44 for the season. Good Lord, who'd have thought? That's almost as many points as we got. I'm David Tavener, over there holding his head, probably drop it because he's a goalkeeper in some six-a-side team. Jake Ellacott.
Hello, Dave. Hello, everyone. Hope you're well.
And somewhere else in St Albans, probably holding a pint of something quite strong, is Lee Wood.
Absolutely scandalous. But yes, you're absolutely right. Good evening, Dave. Good evening, Jacob. How are you?
We're very well, I think. Well, speaking for myself, can't tell about Jake, of course. Right. The first game we have to talk about is last Saturday at Clarence Park, St Albans City versus championship chasing Dorking Wanderers. They've been in fantastic form, but they failed to score on the opening day of the season against Concord Rangers, and then scored in every single match since then. I've got it written down somewhere, but I can't see it now. 47 consecutive games. And we've been a bit suspect of late, but we kept a clean sheet, and we probably just about shaded the win deservedly.
Yeah, I think so. It was a really good performance, wasn't it? I have to say, I wasn't expecting it. I think a lot of people were very fearful going into the game of what might happen and what Dorking might do to us. You know, so they've been on a great run recently, scoring goals for fun, really, compared to us. But yeah, I thought the team was set up really well. We defended well. You know, we probably should have. You know, Sean probably could have got one or two others really goals. He had some chances. But yeah, I mean, fair play to the Saints. You know, we said before the game all we wanted them to do was show a bit of fight, put in a decent performance for a good crowd. And they did just that. And, you know, it kept us in the playoff hunt for a couple more days.
Indeed. You go along with most of that, Lee?
I would. And I thought our shape was very good, actually. But I was disappointed by Dorking. I really genuinely was, because, as you say, they were free-flowing, free-scoring team. And they had a chance of the title, but we've got carved open by worse teams than Dorking over the past 4 months. And I thought we were solid. I thought the back four were well organised, and we created chance and we attacked with purpose and pace. And as Jake said, that's all we're really after as football fans, isn't it? To be competitive and maybe be in with a chance of winning a game or two. So, yeah, really, really pleased for the boys, because they've been getting some absolute abuse, most notably from us, but deserved. But no, I honestly thought we played superbly well, but I did expect more though from Dorking.
Yeah, Dorking had a couple of chances, a couple of headers they should have made more of, and towards the end of the game, Jason Pryor, I think it was, went through and lifted the ball over the crossbar when he should have hit the target. But as Jake said, Sean Jeffers could have scored a few more for us, and but we're not going to complain. The one he got was sufficient to win the points. Before the game, I bumped into a scout who was looking at one of the forwards on the show, and it wasn't the one who scored the winning goal. So don't worry, anybody. It's one down the other end. But he didn't do his case much good, I felt. You talk about the shape of the side. If I remember rightly, well, it says Johnny Neal here on the team sheet. I think it probably means Joe Neal. He played on the right midfield, as he did again on Monday, rather than up front. That was an interesting experiment.
Yes, and I have to say, I thought on Saturday it worked. He was much more, I say, Dave, on the right. I thought he drifted into the middle a little bit as well, just for Sean, almost like an attacking midfielder at times. And it did work. And, you know, Joe, I think he's put in some decent performances. And, you know, he hasn't scored in a competitive game. And, you know, we brought him in to score goals. He is a striker. So that is a mark against him. But, you know, the more I see him in that sort of role behind a striker or to the right or to the left, I think he looks pretty good there, you know, and maybe that's what Ian's possibly looking at already for next season, maybe changing his formation, putting Joe Neal in a different part. And yeah, but at the same time, I think Joe will know he probably should have scored a couple of goals this season.
Can I just say though, fellas, that you can't help but think that maybe Ian's giving Joe Neal a second bite of the cherry here by maybe playing him in a different position, because up front, I thought he had a good game against Hemel away. He sort of split the two centre halves and it created spaces for other players. But since then, it hasn't really worked for him. And I think maybe Ian sort of looking at every way possible of getting him into the side and maybe getting him some getting some goals or some action from somewhere, because you have to feel the longer it does go on without him scoring, the chances of sort of him being a permanent fixture in the side next season are very, very slim.
I agree with that. I think Ian's done exactly the right thing. He's had a run of 5 or 6 games at the end of the season. It'd be. We'll have a much better idea of what he can do by then. I wish he'd use his left foot a bit more. Although he did score a terrific goal with it against Dagenham and Redbridge. There's a good player in there, and he's got a decent work rate. When he come good in time, as you also say, how long do you keep waiting?
Yeah, it's about ways. He is still young, but then I think also on the counterpoint, though, you'd say, we talked about last week, players being played out of position. Is he out of position on the right? I'd argue possibly. He's not a winger. And then I think it feeds into, again, we've not had any wingers this season, have we? Truly natural, as someone else might say, chalk on the boots, get out there and do it down there. And we've not really had that at all this season. I think that's been missing. So, but fair play to Joe, played well. Got the assist on Saturday, didn't he, Dave? Or was it Zane?
Yeah, whatever. You were near enough. NLP was close enough, Jake. It's one of our players.
One of those blokes in yellow.
That's right. Yeah. Chalk on the boots. What are you on? Is it stronger than what Lee's on?
You have to say, Dave, that you said that you met up with a scout before the game. Jake and I met up with a bunch of thirsty Norwegians before the game, and I don't know about you, mate, but I think I'm still reeling the effects of a whole weekend of debauchery. And but it was good to have our friends over from Oslo again, and they enjoyed themselves immensely. They were always good company, and obviously they brought the 3 points with them as well. So yeah, well done, fellas.
Yeah, it was great to see them. Sorry, Dave, and I say fair play, coming all that way to watch the Saints in our recent form. You've got to respect that. A lot of money, a lot of time.
It was another cracking game, wasn't it? 1,500. Incredible.
Although it was City Youth Day, wasn't it, Lee? So there was a lot of City Youth members down there, but it was really good to see, and that's why it was important that we actually turned up and put in a good performance, because at some point these crowds might drop off, might drop away. You've got to keep performing. We've not done it enough at Clarence Park this season, but it was good to see that on Saturday.
Yeah, what was it? 3 games without a goal before that down the park, wasn't it? And yet we still get another 1,500 gate. Will it carry on into next season? Now that we're not in the playoff hunt anymore, we're starting afresh.
Yeah, but it's really, we've always wanted it, haven't we? We've always wanted the community in the city to get behind the club, and they have been doing that, especially after the Forest Green game. And so I think all the Saints fans that have come down to Clarence Park this season, I think, deserve a round of applause for putting up with some of the football at times, but just backing the Saints and getting behind them. The fans have done all they could this season. So the 1-0 win over Dorking, our 309th 1-0 win, as you probably already remember. It meant we went to Oxford City on the bank holiday Monday, still in with a chance at the playoffs. Did either of you really think it was on?
No. People saying it's on. Oh, of course it's on, but that would mean us winning the final 3 games when we've barely managed 3 wins in 4 months. I mean, I'm a City fan, but I'm also a realist, and I don't, no, I didn't. If I'm honest, I thought we were excellent value for the win against Dorking, but Oxford, I don't know. We don't really play well on plastic as well, so it was against us. I didn't go to the game, so you boys are going to have a better attack of how things unfolded.
Well, Jake will now give us a summary.
Yeah, great football. No, it was a bit of a no-mark game, I thought, apart from Johnny Goddard's goal. Actually, to fair, a couple of good goals. Oxford scored a couple of decent goals. Their first goal, not really sure how the bloke managed to run 40 yards pretty much unchallenged straight through the middle. But Saints responded well. And before that opening goal, it started well. And then Johnny Goddard, brilliant equaliser. And then they just never kicked on, I didn't think, Dave. Didn't kick on at all, really, when we knew it had to be a must-win game, especially with the haven't result going the way it was at the time. Had to win that, stay in it. And I just didn't think we really showed that endeavour and drive to really go out there and get those 3 points. And then second half, I think, similar story in recent weeks. Didn't come out like I think we should have. Substitutions probably didn't work again. and Oxford the 2 goals, and in the end it was comfortable, and it felt again a bit like Dartford, almost like a pre-season friendly by the end. 2 sides battling a little bit, fans, everyone
Tell
seemed
you what,
content.
mate, that is an absolutely amazing summary considering of the state that you were in before the game, the pictures that I've seen. Absolutely superb.
I remember I was in a much better state yesterday than Saturday. I remember the game very well. It was a footballing feast.
I sent him a picture. I sent him a picture, Lee, of him at the game yesterday. Behind the goal in the second half, with a whole load of other City supporters, and I'm not sure if he's leaning on the barrier watching the game, or the barrier really is doing him a favour and there's somebody propping him up against it. You can't really tell.
Tabs, I'm not surprised, buddy, because the state he was in on Saturday, I mean, they had to disinfect the Mermaid pub afterwards. It was just an absolute monstrosity. I mean, he was dancing and all sorts. It was merriment was had by all.
It was the 3 points that really got me going on Saturday night. You know, it's nothing to do with alcohol, it's 3 points. But Dave, I don't know what you thought of the game on Monday. Would you say that's a fair summary, or just anything else to comment on?
I pretty much agree with you, Jake. I thought we started very brightly. I thought this is good. And it made Oxford, I thought, attack as well. So the first few minutes was some lively exchanges at either end, which looked promising. They got that goal, what was it, about 14 minutes? And for about 10 minutes after that, we were hanging on. They looked like they were going to score at any time. Zach McEachran was what his name is. He got that terrific goal. As you say, how could he go on a run like that? Crikey, we watched the Chelmsford player do it the other week, and we haven't learned. Hang on, let these blokes go down the left and come in the middle and score. Yeah, okay. So Johnny Goddard's goal came at the right time, and after that, the rest of the half, we were fairly comfortable. I think Joey Schifano had a goal disallowed for offside, and we were fairly comfortable. The second half, it didn't really happen for us, did it? I got those 2 goals in, about 4 minutes? Joe got one of them. And a young player, they're very pleased with Ewan Clark, got the 3rd goal. And that was it. It was all over. It was a bit like an end-of-season game after that. There's no way we were going to turn that round into a 4-3 win. And our season was done and dusted then, really. Full marks were in for making 3 substitutions for 20 minutes to go. We'd just gone 2-1 down. He's trying to make substitutions when it was 1-1, I think. Trying to get fresh legs in there to see us over the line those last 20 minutes. It didn't happen. But our season, it didn't come down to the game at Oxford City. A playoff place was lost between now and the week before Forest Green Rovers. But the week before then, well, I think we spoke about it before. We beat Eastbourne Borough down a park 2-1. Terrific turnaround, great second half performance. That put us second in the table. Was it 22 points from 10 games? Always looking good. But in the 29 games since then, we picked up 30 points, even with Saturday's win. That's relegation form, because that's a big chunk of a season to be not winning games.
Tabs, can I just ask you, mate? I've got a question for you. And so we spoke about the attendances before and how good they've been consistently across the course of their season. Taking that into consideration, taking into whether you agree with it or not, the global coverage that we've been getting on social media across the season, we've arguably got one of the hottest strikers outside of the pro game, the integration of a couple of young local lads into the first team. The City youth are doing their thing. We've got a B side now, which is competitive. Forest Green Rovers game, which, although the whole season isn't defined by one game, some do say it's been the biggest game in our history. All that collectively, is the season still a failure, or is the last 4 months just eradicated everything that's good that has gone before?
We spoke about this to a degree last week, Lee, and the season, is it a failure? No. It's a big disappointment, I think, for a lot of supporters who had high hopes 4 or 5 months ago to see us not just fade away points-wise, but performance-wise, how we changed our attitude. It'll be seen as disappointing, I think, rather than a failure. The Forest Green Rovers will be seen as the biggest, most successful day in our history, beating whatever League Division 4, whatever that counts as nowadays, the league leaders of that. In front of the TV cameras, a 4,000 crowd, which is only half the size we had for the win over Brentford in 1924. That game, it will define the season. There's no 2 ways about it. Not getting promoted, that won't matter. As we said last week, in 50 years' time, people won't give a monkeys about that. It's the FA Cup game. people will still talk about.
I wonder whether Ian would feel the same way, because his remit wouldn't be based on me. Obviously, he can't foresee players that would be integrated into the side or where we're going to be in the cup games. But his post-match was probably the most revealing all season, because you can see he was just done with the season. He said it in himself, let's get Thursday training out of the way, let's get Saturday out of the way, and he's just chomping at the bit now to reboot and reset in time for the next campaign. So it is.
I'll go back on one other point you said there as well, Lee, in the first bit about the crowds. They are astonishing. I've never known anything like that in what 50 odd years I've been watching. Never known crowds like this, even higher than in our conference national days. I think you're right. The two local lads have done very well. Hugh's got a little way to go yet, I think. He's got to be a bit more positive in his game, but he's made good strides this season. Alex, I think, has been a revelation at left back. He's sped out of the game. He's come back really well. Unfortunately, he got a dead leg at Oxford on Monday. Hopefully, that won't keep him out of Saturday's game. I think those two youngsters have helped boost the crowds, because you look at the number of school kids at the park. The FA Cup has undoubtedly drawn a lot of people in, and the TV cameras. And yet, as Ian said in his interview with Neil at the Hearts Ad at Oxford, I haven't seen the club interview yet. We were lucky with that cup run. We've mentioned it. We could have gone out in all the 3 qualifying rounds. Luck was on our side. It carried us through. Did we have a bit of luck beating Forest Green Rovers? No, not really. We did very well on the day, and the club did tremendously, and that's possibly why we've held on to so many supporters. But I am slightly bemused that we have held on to so many, given the way we've played in recent months, because it has not been attractive. And the funny thing was, over the weekend, I went back through every video, looking at how our goals were scored and conceded. And you're looking at the early games up until before Forest Green Rovers. We attacked with such speed. When we got the ball, the other side was immediately put on the back foot. We went for them. And now you look at us. When we get a ball on a halfway line, the first thought isn't, I'm going to put this defender under pressure. It's, we've got to keep possession here, boys. We've got to go across the pitch. Oh, look, it's Michael Johnson. Let's give it back to him. And anybody who doesn't think I'm speaking the truth, just look at the early videos. It's so different to the way we've played now. I briefly mentioned that to Ian yesterday after the game, and he seemed flummoxed as to what's happened as well. So one assumes it's not a train. They've not been told to play that way. They can't have taken it upon themselves. I think it's something that needs to be looked at, because the attitude has been wrong on the pitch, or tactics, whichever way you want to look at it. And it hasn't allowed the players to bring the best out of themselves as they did early in the season. We're looking at results for 2/3 of the season, maybe 3/4. We're a poor side. You look at his first quarter of the season, we're terrific. And yet it's pretty much the same players.
Well, that's it though, isn't it? Because you've just spoke about the Dorking game and then the Oxford game, the two massive contrasts of our season, just in those 2 games alone, where we've been solid and we've scored goals and we've looked okay, to then just a poor side. And it would be interesting to sort of hear what fans think about whether the season, has been a failure. Has it been a success because of the elements that we spoke about earlier on? But the one thing that I've found is that we've been absolutely harping on about the fact that Ian's not signed any players. And is it the fact now that because there's an extra obstacle in place in terms of our director of football, flip that on its head? The last 5 years, Ian Allinson has pretty much signed who he wanted, when he wanted, within the budget, and he's still not managed to get it over into the playoffs. He's still not managed to get us into the playoffs. So he's done it his way, and now he's doing it via director of football way. So it's like, well, is Dean Austin's appointment, is that really the be all and end all as into why we've not got more players in? But again, it's just this season. It's been so bizarre, everything that's unfolded, and how the massive contrast between our season post-Christmas and pre.
Right, sorry, Jay. I want to carry on from what Lee said there. You come in a minute. Director of football. I'm not going to go at Dean Austin, by the way. Director of football. It came into the top level of football a few years ago, and people looked at it and thought, well, this is ridiculous. And it is ridiculous. It should be down to the manager, who he signs, who he plays, and whatever tactics. You should not have somebody above him deciding you're going to have this player, you're going to have that player. And have we got an element of that at Clarence Park? Where you go back to the fans forum and we heard a ludicrous phrase about a player has to fit the profile of a club or something. No, Ian's never bothered about that in the past. Ian's a football man. He's not thinking, oh, he looks rather nice. He dresses smartly. We'll have him. We'll have him down the park. Ian's a football man. He wants footballers in that team, and he'll get them behaving at Clarence Park. You ain't got to worry about that. So I am worried about that, because if that is the reason why, one of the reasons, I know another reason why, I'm not going to disclose it now. If that is one of the reasons why we haven't signed players, then that is a worry. To me, at this level of football, a director of football is a no-no. The manager should have complete control of his squad, who he brings in, who he lets go, and whatever he does, and then he can fall by his own decisions or
Even though
get
that,
rewarded by a decision.
even though that player in question, or the person in question, is an ex-player, he knows the area, he's got the best intentions for the club. This isn't just some random fellow we've got in from wherever it may be. Dean Austin,
that's what
go on.
That's why I'm not knocking it, Lee, knocking him personally.
Yeah,
knocking the position. It's a
Yeah.
position of a director of football. It doesn't fit nicely in football generally, and doesn't fit at all nicely in non-league football. It's too much. It's too much. It makes the club. It's like you got a full-time head of media, you got a full-time secretary. So some of the other positions they could get shot of as well. In the end, the organisation becomes too big. That's another subject.
Yeah.
The passion debate. To be fair, we did have a question actually asking, the second half of the form, second half form, who is responsible, who should take the blame? Is it Ian? Is it Dean? Is it the owners, or is it the players? There's four groups there. Maybe you'd like to class it as, and it'd be interesting to hear what people think. I know opinions are very much split, and I think that division over opinions is because people really can't get their heads around what's happened here. The lack of signings, the lack of everything. It's just bizarre. I cannot understand it. And this second half form is awful. But sorry, Dave.
No, that's good, Jack. The other thing about it, something gets too big, we got Ian Anderson, we got Chris Winton as assistant manager, Steve Hoy, Steve Conroy, and Peter Russell was goalkeeper coach. We got those three extra coaches. Ian didn't used to have that many people around him. I'm not going to criticise those people because they've probably all got individual jobs. But you do wonder, is there too many voices there? Maybe that's the way it goes now. All clubs have probably got these number of things, these number of people now. They're all doing different roles. The game has changed.
But the season is over, all bar the shouting. But it was very interesting to hear Ian say, well, he's going to go to the owners and see what they want now, because it's, and he's never done that before. He's highlighted the fact that he should have brought more players in, even though we saw it months and months ago, which probably is an inner frustration he wants to sort of get out as well. We have had a question here as well about is the footballing success and inconvenience to the owners now the club are getting good crowds and making a bit more money? Football seems secondary or even a tertiary concern after social media and the fact the club is now becoming a little bit more sustainable.
Do you want to go first on that one, Jake?
I mean, I personally don't think so, because at the end of the day, I think all the success stems from the football on the pitch. At the end of the day, the crowds, the good support, Forest Green run, etc. Like you say, that run in the cup, we were lucky. We know that,
buddy, because the crowds have been good and we've been shit. So it's there is the.
I know, but then I think that success just to get to Forest Green has meant we've been able to achieve. That cup run, we were lucky, but it was still an enjoyable cup run and it drew people in. So it's difficult to say. I think the owners do want success. Speaking to some of them, they want to, and I know people have spoken to them, and on the face of it, they said what they want, and we heard what they said at the fans forum as well. But at the same time, you have got to think. You look at Braintree, Welling, etc. At the bottom half of the table. I know it's not comparable to a playoff chase really, but they all spent money just before the transfer deadline, brought in players to turn things around, and they did. Braintree have turned things around. Welling did. I mean, one of Welling's signings, Harvey Bradbury, scored their third goal yesterday, to secure safety. It might not work for every club, didn't work for Billericay, but you've got to take a punt and go for it. And the signings this season, I think definitely a lot of questions about whether it's Ian, whether it's Dean, or whether it's the owners. Do they really want take that final step? But you can have a final step. You can get to the playoffs. Of course, we know how difficult the playoffs are. I think the Saints wouldn't have a great chance in the playoffs, but just take a chance. Just get there. You never know. So yeah, it's very disappointing, and it's an interesting discussion.
So some of the supporters you were with yesterday, Jake, made a point, which I think has been made before, since the fans forum, when one of the owners mentioned about the bonus the players received for the FA Cup run, and yeah, I mean, it almost the way he said it sounded like it wrote off most of our profits from the run, which is of course a load of cobblers. And players are suggesting maybe we should have made the league incentivized, if it's such a word, nice word. And maybe the players would have done better if that had been the case there. I don't believe that for 1 minute. I think the players would go out in any game and try and win no matter what. If they're not good enough, another thing, or for whatever reason it doesn't come off. But I don't think sticking a huge cash price on getting us into the playoffs would have been the answer to what we saw most of the second half of the season.
Well, it's interesting because I was speaking to a chairman of a club in this division, and he was saying that the full-time clubs obviously have it over at the part-time clubs 9 times out of sort of 10. But the one place where part-time clubs do excel is the fact that if things aren't going particularly well, they can get someone in short-term to get them out of the crap, because then they haven't got to commit themselves. They haven't got full-time contracts where you've got to pay players 52 weeks of the year, which the full-time clubs do have that. So, as Jake said, Welling, Braintree, they can go and get players short-term, good, decent players who can, absolutely fill their boots and help get them out of a rut for 6 weeks or 8 weeks. And then they can just be gone in the summer because they've got no commitment after that, but they've done their job in helping things turn a bit around. But it's just really weird. And Dave, you've alluded to this on many, many occasions, mate, that Ian's player, he gets players in left, right and centre normally, and this has hampered him. It has hampered him, and it'd be very interesting to see maybe if we had got 1 or 2 players in, whether we'd still be prolonging our season by an extra few weeks.
I think.
Well, it's funny, picking on the things you said there, sorry, Jake.
That's right.
If a club is struggling towards the end of the season, before the transfer cut off, they bring players in. And if you're mid-table, non-league has got a history of clubs cutting their budget so players can be picked up. Or if you're in our position, you spend money, you don't have to go over the top, just to boost that squad to get you through the final weeks of the season. We brought in a lone player from Luton Town. I don't want to be rotten to Avon Jones, but his form wasn't the greatest with us. And looking at Luton's result yesterday, they could do with quite a few new defenders. And on the other side, Cameron Green, he was decent, but was he that much better than Alex Lancashire? I don't think so. And they don't strike me as 2 Ian Allen signings, loan players for the whole second half of the season. But Bailey Brown from Hendon, that's the sort of signing he speculates with. And he often comes up with a good one. Sometimes they don't work out. We know that. Bailey fits that perfectly. He was sort of worked, sort of didn't work. But to me, I think he's had his hands tied.
I think
sorry, go on, Jake.
As I say, I think we'll never know, will we, until maybe in a couple of years' time, But I think the thing about the interview yesterday was, big fan of Ian, really like Ian. I think, in the first couple of minutes in the interview, he says probably should have signed 2 or 3 in the end this season, and we probably need 2 or 3 to refresh the squad going into next season. But we all saw that at Christmas, didn't we? And we'll never know why he didn't make the signings. We don't know if it was him, the owners, director of football. We'll never know why. But to see him say that 20 minutes after our season's been blown apart, it's just like we were mentioning this how long ago now, and he even mentioned Devontae Stanley, didn't he? And he mentioned him, but how long did we go without a proper right back? I know we had players covering there, but and when we signed Cameron Green, I said I don't think Cameron Green lived up to the hype in the end. I think it was a good signing at the time. I think it was a good idea, but I don't think he lived up to it. And Alex Lancashire's returned, done well. But on that same day, I remember thinking, why are we not signing a central midfielder? Why are we not getting another striker? Some support, strengthening these key areas where we're really struggling. And we know that David Noble was only a few weeks away, but we'd gone 3 months without David Noble. So just a lot of questions that I don't think I'll be able to get my head around. I don't think a lot of supporters do. And I think that's the annoying thing for supporters is the decisions this season have not been understandable. If Ian had taken a punt and got some players in, risked it, and if it didn't work, fair enough. But I'm the opposite.
One of those two people we've been talking about has failed. Either Ian at bringing players in, or the director of football at not bringing players in. One of them has failed, and it's cost us a place in the playoffs.
So you've just both said there, Jake, Ian was frustrated, and you almost sort of saw he was releasing all that sort of built up tension in that post match, because he was just, let's speak to the owners now. We should have done this. We should have done this. All very sort of hindsight theories. But here's one for you, Dave. You're in the summer, right? So the season is over. Ian's now looking at the frustrations he's had this season. Things aren't going to change in terms of off the pitch for next season. Does he turn around and think, you know what? Can I be asked? Is it what I want? Is that how I want to manage my team? Does he try and endure another campaign, or does he say, well, you know what? It's not the way I want to do my best work, and I would be disrespecting St Albans City by turning up again as manager. So what do we do?
Well, those supporters I spoke to at Oxford yesterday about us not signing players did all seem to go and blame the director of football. Now, we don't know. It's always a hunch by them. We're not saying it is Dean's fault. That is what way people feel, because they know the way Ian works in the past. So makes you wonder, well, if we're not going to sign players, and we look likely to lose Sean Jeffers if we're going to show this lack of what's the word I'm looking for?
Ambition.
Adventure or whatever you like. Ambition, that's the word. Thanks, Jack. If we show a lack of ambition, you can't just imagine Sean's going to hang around, and you can't blame him either. And you've got other players in there as well. So if he's facing the same perceived ties next season, it's difficult to see Ian want to continue under those restraints. And if there are restraints as we perceive them anyway.
Of course, you've also got to factor that Ian does have another role at the club, doesn't he? He does have is it sponsorship?
He makes sandwiches for the Watford under-23s, doesn't he? Very important role, that fella.
But he does a lot of the sponsorship stuff, doesn't he? And he's got that role. And I think Ian probably will want to stay and try and prove this season wrong next season. And it'll be interesting to see if he goes to the owners and say, "Can I get a bit more money? Try and get a bit more support and get us make that final step." But I say, I'm sure similar to fans, I think everyone was very frustrated at the end of the game yesterday. I think Ian was, and I think we all have very similar feelings about how the season's finished. So hopefully people can understand why he might seem a little bit down today. We are frustrated, but Ian demonstrated those same frustrations, and it was really interesting. Maybe not what he said, but you could hear it in his voice, almost the raw emotion about, I just want this done now. I'm done. And he talked about going away and having a break, didn't he? Both him and the players. And it'll be really interesting to see what happens now over the next couple of weeks. Being a long season, he's had a lot of success, a lot of achievements with the Forest Green, and I think we'll always have Ian to thank for that, and for the players for one of the best days in our club's experience, and one of our best days as supporters. But I think at the end yesterday, you could just tell that they'd had enough, and I think they just can't wait to get the season done with.
Dave, you spoke about Sean there, maybe looking on to pastures new. Are we in danger of losing some of our other star players, maybe Goddard or Banton, for example, maybe even Michael Johnson? Because a decent non-league keeper, they don't grow on trees, mate. And if someone with a little bit of cash comes in, who's to sort of stop them?
It depends. Our club has never had more money in its history than it has this season. As we know, it went into the campaign with £400,000 in the bank. It will have gained at least, well, at the fans forum, the owner said we've got about 160,000 profit from the FA Cup. I think that's been a somewhat modest summary. And all the money we've gained from these home games, when all these food bars and whatnot all around the pitch, we will have raked it in. That 400,000 we had at the start of the season may well have been doubled. You never know. That might be a bit overly optimistic. So we have money to speculate. Well, not speculate, show a bit of ambition. That might encourage some of the bigger names to stay. if we don't show that ambition, can you blame players who are thinking, I might try my luck somewhere else?
No, I don't think so. I mean, Michael Johnson's an interesting one, Lee, because you remember about a month and a half ago, he came out in support of Ian, didn't he? He said how much he loved playing under him. And I think a lot of these players, I think, do really enjoy playing under Ian and like playing for the club. I think they do really enjoy the support they get. I think a lot of it will depend on if Ian stays, what the commitments are for next season, what are the promises. But as you say, some of these players, they're getting into the primes now, especially, Mitchell Weiss, Michael Johnson, even someone like Callum Adabai might fancy getting picked up. If someone comes along with the money that we can't offer, I think there's a chance that some of them will go. Even someone like Kyle Wiltshire, the amount of good work he's done in midfield this season. And these players, someone like Jeffers, don't particularly begrudge if he wants to go because he's given us a season and a half with COVID of really good service and he's been banging the goals in. And if you have someone like that at the top, surely you've got to be getting into playoffs. But I think there's just a lot of question marks at the minute, isn't there? And I think things will become clear in the next couple of months. But yeah, I wouldn't blame anyone if they wanted to go.
Do you agree with the statement that Karen Wiltshire and Johnny Goddard, two of our best players, I should say, have not been at their best in the second half of the season?
I think you could say that about pretty much almost every player in the squad, bar Jeffers, maybe, potentially. I think everyone else in the squad has not had a great second half season. Michael Johnson's had some good games, but he's also had a couple of iffy moments in the last couple of months, and everyone has. So, I don't think anyone's been particularly great. I mean, the only actual players that probably stand out in the last couple of weeks, probably Alex Lancashire and Hugh Dawson, the two lads that have come back in.
I'll go for Alex, definitely. One player who's not in the side for quite a few weeks now, since he got sent off at Concord. Tom Bender, he used to be, so we were told, pretty much a first name on the sheet. He'd had as rough a spell as anybody, there's no two ways about it. He's stuck on 249 appearances. He's been left outside now for about half a dozen games. Is his time done at Clarence Park?
I think it just depends, doesn't it, on whether Ian is still in charge. I think that Ian saw something in Tom that is like a leader. And okay, even when he's playing at 50-60%, he'll still give you everything he possibly can. But in this game, it's now different to when Tom first started. When Tom first signed for us. I don't know, Taz, because the thing is, we don't know where this is. This is the end of season sort of post-mortem chat we're going through now, because players are going to be talking amongst themselves about, next season. Fans are definitely talking amongst themselves about next season. There's so much uncertainty created by this sort of no news is good news policy that's been coming out of the club. And it's just really, really bizarre. In terms of performances, Goddard, I think, has been played out of position, which hasn't helped his case. I don't believe we've played to a lot of our players' strengths. I think we've just made players fit into a system which isn't beneficial to them, as opposed to getting specific players for the system that they want to play, which is the difference. Tom, I hope, just give him his 250th but that's, it's a case because I think he wants to stay as well. I still think he's got something to give. If not playing regularly, then certainly from a coaching perspective, him and Nobby could be a decent acquisition in terms of the coaching setup, because what's another two coaches to the 18 we've already got, so it's that's going to be great. I just think the season needs to end, and then it needs a massive conversation between Ian and the owners and Dean, because we can't have another season of this where it's just not acceptable, some of the performances, given the fact that they've created and given us some of the most amazing highs as well.
I think the point about leaders and Tom Bender, I think, is a really good point, actually, this season. You do look out there, again, the second half of the season, apart from maybe David Noble, who else has been really true leaders in the squad? I'm not sure. It's difficult to say, look at some of the best sides in the division. They've got big leaders, strong personalities, and I don't know if we really had that. So I think that's why Ian likes Tom, and I think he'd probably try and keep him if he can. But also, you have to say, Tom's got a lot of stick from a lot of supporters, but he's been a great servant to the club. 249 appearances is nothing to laugh at. Absolutely brilliant. He's put in some great performances over time. He's helped us have great memories. So we'll see. But as you say, Lee, now we've got a lot of question marks, and people have talked. Well, Ian's talked about having a break now and players stepping away. might be a little time now until we find out really the shape of the squad, the shape of the club going into next season.
There we go.
I think we're gonna have more inquiries the next couple of weeks after the Tunbridge game. Then we can set a whole programme just seeing how things have developed since then.
But we've
So, do you want to?
I was going to say we've still got to play one more game, haven't we?
Tunbridge Angels Saturday. Do you want a prediction for the final game?
Because we're so good at those, aren't we? Nigel Culkin's
well this season.
absolutely hammered me on Twitter, on Facebook, sorry, and quite rightly, Professor, because I've been atrocious at the predictions. I reckon we're going to end with a victory, boys. I think this has been one of those seasons when I think we're going to end on a little bit of a high and send us on our very, very merry way to the beaches of the continent, knowing we've got 3 points to end the season with.
Go on, Lee. How many goals?
I reckon it's going to be a cheeky 3-0, Dave.
Oh, Jake, can you top that?
Yeah, I was going to say beach of the continent is a funny way of saying Southend on Sea. I'm going to go 4-1 Saints. Go on, let's end it on a high. Neither team managed to play. Interestingly, Joe Neal on the post-match talked about how much the players want to prove something next Saturday, and I'd love them to do that.
Too bucky right.
Right, we shall end it on a high. 27 years ago, on the 2nd of May, which is the day we played, the anniversary we played Oxford City. 27 years, 1985. Is that the year you were born, Jake? 1995. That's what I meant. I meant 1995. Right. So, yeah, it was. Right. We won the Heart Charity Cup that day. A 2-1 win over Bournemouth. Have they got a football team? This is our side. You'll enjoy some of these names, Lee. Gareth Howells, Sean Brett. Oh, Peter, do you want to switch off now, Peter Risley? You were sent off that day. Andy Paulson, Kevin Budd. What happened to him? Never see him anymore. Steve Scott, Martin Gurney. You got one of the goals. Andy Driscoll, Monty. Steve Clark. What a player he could have been if he could score some goals.
I've heard of him.
Yeah. Barry Blackman. And I won't name number 11 yet. I'll come to the 2 subs who came on. Erskine Smart and Trevor Wilkinson. The other one who played, Derek Brown. He scored one of the goals. Of course, the father of Bailey Brown.
Oh, there you go.
That's the players there.
And I've got another more recent anniversary, 5th of May, 2014. Saints 3, Chesham United 1, playoffs final, Southern League. What a day that was. Again, great team. Paul Bastock, John Frendo, Howie Hall, Lee Chappell. Great names in that. And, probably, that was a long time ago now. It's flown past. So it's nice to get 2 positives there to end on.
What a team. And what players are there, Dave? Goodness me, mate. Barry Blackman, the non-league Cantona. Absolutely fantastic player. Andy Driscoll as well. And you won't know this, Jace. Andy Driscoll used to do this thing where he used to score and do like a backflip and somersault and all this sort of stuff. And I wouldn't say he was a big fella, but he was, stocky fella. But he got some flips in, mate. He got some reps in. He was a good lad. And what a player, though, to be fair as well. What a player. Good team there, Tabs. Well done, mate. I like that.
Yeah, it's nice one, wasn't it? Yeah, happy memories. Right, we'll see you all on Saturday then. Clarence Park, St Albans City versus Tunbridge Angels, however you pronounce it. National League South, kick-off 3 o'clock.
Brilliant. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Cheers.